I think we can start now. Yeah. So a very good morning to all of you, and it's a pleasure to welcome esteemed panelists today, and and especially all the virtual delegates who have joined us today in making this webinar successful. First of all, MSME is such an important subject that we have taken up today, ISCC, and ISCC constantly endeavor that the subject that we take up is really beneficial for the industry is at large. When we talk about MSME, I feel personally that MSME is the voice of the masses. That's what I feel. And the present, the future, the present scenarios that we have been seeing, India is absolutely leveraging all kind of resources to make MSMEs resilient enough so that the contingency challenges that is coming in way forward for the MSMEs like pandemic or whether it is technology or whether it is global competition, so that the MSMEs can keep well ahead with the pace and can cater to those challenges. So the post-union budget has also seen a massive flow of fund towards MSMEs. So with these words, it's a privilege and honor to welcome and to introduce the fellow panelists today. We have among us Mr. Purna Chandra Rao, who is the national president of ISCC. Mr. Rao, uh, he has completed his BE in mechanical engineering from Bangalore University. He has obtained his mechanical engineering from the University of Tennessee in 1985. He has also obtained his MS in computer science from the University of Tennessee in 88. Mr. Rao has worked on developing and maintaining application software at the Oak Ridge National Labs and Federal Defense Labs, Tennessee. He has over 28 years of experience in the design and development of software. He has an in-depth experience in all aspects of software development lifecycle. Currently, he is serving as the managing director, Global Infovision Private Limited from Hyderabad. Let me introduce the next panelist today, Mr. R.N. Bhaskar, and it's lovely to have him back again for our program. He is absolutely adept in moderating all the sessions that we have organized so far at ISCC. Mr. Bhaskar is he is the senior consulting editor of Free Press Journal and Asia coverage, and he has spent 25 years in journalism. He was with Business India, Times of India, Indian Express Group as a full-time journalist. Since 2000, he has preferred being a consulting editor with various publications. He has held many positions with DVB Media and DNA, Business India, and First Post Network 18. On the educational front, he teaches both undergraduate and postgraduate, and he has keen interest in undertaking policy research. Let me move on to the next panelist. We have Mr. Rajan Raje with us. Currently, Mr. Rajan Raje is the CEO of Nichem Solutions, a specialty chemical manufacturing company. He has 25 years of uh, uh, entrepreneurial experience, and prior to entering into chemical business, he has worked as a profit center of Class Equipments Private Limited, a subsidiary of Red Fusion Advertising Limited and Willet International UK. He has rich experience of 40 years in developing and promoting niche chemicals for drinking water, agriculture, polymer additives, and ecological disinfectants. He is currently on the board of Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, member of the Agriculture Committee of BCCI, heads the MSME Committee of BCCI, and ICC, Indian Chamber of Commerce, Western Chapter, heads the MSME Committee. Mr. Bhushan Parekh. Mr. Bhushan Parekh is the Director of SME Solutions at CRISIL. He leads the SME analytics for institutional, retail, real estate, and educational sector. In addition, he heads the transformation office at CRISIL, overseeing key strategic initiatives, partnerships, and digital transformation projects. Prior to SME Solutions, Mr. Bhushan held various positions in product management, analytics, and risk management functions. He comes with a strong track record of incubating new businesses, and he has been in CRISIL for close to 14 years. Mr. Parekh has keen interest in developing the MSME sector, as well as keep a close watch on startup ecosystem. Mr. Bhushan has completed his master's in management studies with specialization in finance from Mumbai University. Let me introduce Mr. Amit Pandit today. Mr. Amit Pandit has been the former board member of Saraswat Bank. He is a chartered accountant by profession with over 25 years of experience in various aspects of finance, government, and risk. He has been on the board for over 13 years. He has a rich experience on risk advisory, business restructuring, corporate finance, finance coaching for SME entrepreneurs. He has been also into valuation, mergers and acquisition, and financial investigations. Board position he held so far is become a former board member of Saraswat Cooperative Bank, True Growth Finvest Services, Global Chamber of Saraswat Entrepreneurs, Omkar Specialty Chemicals Limited, and Saraswat Infotech. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Kapil Kaul. He's our Executive Vice President at ISCC. Mr. Kaul is currently the board member of the Rosoi Group, and he looks after business development and corporate strategy. He has 40 years of experience in the commodity sector, both marketing as well as commodity purchase. He has been managing FMCG and automotive business, component business at the corporate level, at strategic corporate level for 25 years. He's the Executive Council member of International Chamber of Commerce, India. He is the coordinator for Honorary Consulate of Mauritius in Kolkata, founder Director General of Alliance for Dual VET, an entity established by the Government of India and Germany to assist in sectors of skill development. He has also been the past regional president of ICC East. With this illustrious set of introductions and having such esteemed panelists with us, it's sheer pleasure to welcome Mr. Purnachandra Rao to deliver his welcome remarks and then we will then the open will be thrown to Mr. Bhaskar to carry forward with his discussions among the panelists. Thank you, Mr. Rao.
Today's event moderator, Mr. Arun Bhaskar, Senior Editor, Asia Coverage and Free Press Journal. Distinguished panelist, Mr. Rajan Rajesh, CEO, Nisham Solutions, Mr. Bhushan Parekh, Director, SME Solutions, CRISIL, Mr. Amit Pandit, former board member, Saraswat Cooperative Bank, my IACC colleague and Executive Vice President, Mr. Kapil Kaul, our Secretary General, Kamal Vora, and Satya, who is instrumental in organizing today's event from IACC. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to welcome all of you. We have experts on the panel of speakers as well as among the participants. I look forward to hearing the views as well as the interaction, and it would be quite interesting, I hope. I feel MSME sector will be an important propeller towards achieving economic growth of any country, especially country like India. Let me begin with few words about ISCC. We have completed 52 years of existence, and our primary objective is to improve bilateral trade relations between India and the United States. Being a membership-driven organization, we constantly strive hard to create a coherent approach in flagging pertinent issues related to Indo-US bilateral trade and investment opportunities. For this purpose, we have organized several webinars in the past, and we aim to keep up the momentum. Incidentally, our membership covers a large portion of MSMEs, and I hope today's discussion will be extremely productive and insightful. MSMEs are considered to be the backbone of Indian economy, and India has approximately 6.3 crore MSMEs. The number of registered MSMEs grew 18.5% year to year to reach about 2.25 lakhs, which is around 2.5 million units in 2020 from 21 lakh units in 2019. The Indian MSME sector contributes about 29% towards the GDP through its national and international trade. The contraction in the Indian economy brought to you by the COVID-19 pandemic have significantly impacted micro, small, and medium enterprises across sectors. As mentioned by CRISIL in its report for MSMEs, the fall in revenue will be steeper, while EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization margin is expected to shrink 200 basis points to 4 to 5% as weak demand gives away gains from lower commodity prices. Central government's timely intervention by providing financial stimulus is considered to be an encouraging move for MSMEs to start business with the renewed optimism. But this is also not considered as up to the mark. The benefits are not as much as the government boasts, I suppose. The budget 21-22 doubled the allocation to the MSME sector to INR 15,700 crores, of course, versus maybe 7,500 crores in the previous budget. In addition to the increased allocation, the budget has also focused on promoting domestic manufacturing that benefits the MSME sector. Increased thrust on the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, higher duty on mobile parts, auto parts, exemption of duty on steel scrap up to 31st March 2022, reduction in customs duty on long steel products, rationalization of duties on import of duty-free items as an incentive to exports in areas of garments, leather, handicrafts, relief to copper recyclers through duty reduction on copper scrap, etc. are also incentives to promote the domestic manufacturing industry and ensuring import substitution. Also, customs duty on finished synthetic gemstones has been raised to encourage their domestic processing. These measures will pave the way for higher role, growth and employment of MSMEs in India. The budget also provides for the introduction of a special framework for debt resolution in respect of MSMEs. Apart from providing structural credit, efforts are being taken to make MSMEs technologically sound. The Ministry of MSME, in a major initiative, onboarded the latest IT tools of artificial intelligence and machine learning for providing assistance and solutions to the MSMEs. The ministry has implemented AI and ML on its robust single window system Champions, which was launched by the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, on June 1st of last year. The strengthening of Atmanirbhar Bharat and production-linked incentive schemes will go a long way in proliferating many domestic manufacturing processing industries and MSME ecosystems that are linked with them in the value chain. I think they released some money yesterday also in this direction for the incentives of these PLI schemes, production-linked incentive schemes, especially I think in the pharma sector and other things. But unprecedented taxes on oil by both central and state governments is a major concern that needs to be addressed. I think there is a lot of backlash in terms of oil prices. I think we have the best of experts today who are going to deliberate on the theme of post-budget impact on MSMEs and opportunities and challenges lay ahead. I'm looking forward to be part of this discussion today. Wishing all of you a fruitful day. Thank you. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Thanks, Satya. Satya, you are muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Rao. I would like to pass on to Mr. R.N. Bhaskar to carry forward with the discussions and steer the discussion forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Satya. Thank you all friends at the ISCC, both on this at this forum as well as in the audience. I have a panel which is rich in experience, both in the corporate sector as well as in advising the government of what should be done about the MSMEs. For me, the MSME is very important for two reasons. I'm not an industrialist. I run a small consulting business, so I also get classified under the MSME sector. Many MSMEs are micro industries. They're small one-man armies, one-man companies, one-man enterprises. And even though a lot of lip service is given to MSMEs, a lot of rules are structured in such a way that they disadvantage MSMEs. A very simple rule is the GST. It's a lovely rule. But if I'm a small man and I go to Tamil Nadu to promote my business and I stay in a hotel there, I don't get a set off on GST because I'm not registered in Tamil Nadu, I'm registered in Maharashtra. So effectively, it's an imposition on me when I try to grow. This is not a one country, one tax. The budget has done many things for the MSME, yes. But while the larger companies have a structure where they can restructure their loans, where they have someone to help them out, the individual is left all alone. He collapses, he collapses. And at the same time, everyone agrees that MSME is a crucial part of India because its contribution to GDP, because its contribution to employment. That is the backbone of our employment sector in India. And that is what I'd love to hear from the panelists because they have more experience than I could ever have on what the budget offers and what more could have been offered. Because the idea is to tell the government what more should be done. Okay, let me invite the first panelist, Mr. Rajan Raje. I don't have to introduce him. The introductions have been done, but I'm waiting to hear from you. Each panelist will speak for 10 minutes. After that, I'll remind them. I hope I don't have to. And then we have enough time for interactions among ourselves, and then we take the questions from the audience. My pleasure to hear to Mr. Raje.
Thank you, Mr. Bhaskar. And good morning to all my esteemed panelists and the listeners. We have already read or we have already heard about what the MSME is. Mr. Rao recently talked about the entire statistics. He also talked about what the budget or what the government has done in the latest budget for MSMEs. So I would rather skip that. As I was introduced, I am an MSME stakeholder for last 25 years. And before that, I was a professional. I mean, the biggest difference I see in myself is I was a professional. I have always followed professionalism in my earlier career, and that has immensely helped me in my own entrepreneurship or in my own business for last 25 years. And that's why probably I would like to take a radical view about the entire situation of the MSMEs in the country. Some people may agree, some people may not agree, but let me at least share my views because I'm very passionate about it. And let me begin that we all know that why MSME prospered in our country because of the lower cost or lower offerings to the larger organizations. And the reasons were clearly, one was the lower excise, which was always offered by the government of India to the MSMEs. And the second one was, unfortunately, unorganized way of working. I mean, they were dealing in cash. I mean, majority of dealings they used to be in MSME in cash. As Mr. Bhaskar said, MSME, unfortunately, though the numbers are large, maybe 80-85% of the units are micro units. They are single man organizations. And as a result of that, they never thought of professionalism. Unfortunately, what happens is how the small organization or a small unit starts. Typically, as a technocrat is working in a larger organization, he sees that my suppliers come with this product, my organization buys them at this product at this price, and I am capable of manufacturing these products. So he one day decides, because he feels that my salary is not adequate, let me go into the business and I'll make more money. Unfortunately, business is making more money. I mean, that's the understanding most of the MSMEs have. So being a technocrat, he goes, obviously he has a knowledge and wherewithal to manufacture the product. But unfortunately, I mean, I'm a technocrat myself. I mean, though I did management diploma, but primarily I'm a technocrat. And as a result of that, I know the mentality of the technocrats, not all of them, but majority of them, that they believe that, oh, it is so easy, I'll manufacture it, I'll supply it. And because my colleagues are buying it, they will always give me a priority. So he goes, he also unfortunately has an insider knowledge that, okay, a component is supplied at 10 rupees. So he goes to the purchase head and says, look, I'm capable of giving this product to you. You know, I know the job. So I'll give it to you at 9 rupees 75 paise or 9.5 rupees. A simple, straightforward offer. Purchase manager believes that, okay, I'm going to save the money for the organization. Why not? So plus he's my friend or he's known to me. So he allows him to do that. So the next step is he goes to the bank and says, look, I know how to manufacture this. I know I have a buyer. So this is my project report. Please give me the money. I want to start the business. And that's it. And to me, the problem begins because the person has most of the times, no idea about the costing, no idea about the finance, no idea about making a project report. Because he goes to a CA and says, look, this is my business. Please prepare a project report. Most of the times, unfortunately, sorry to say, but the CAs were not as professional. Things are changing. I'm not saying they are not changing. But most of the time they said, okay, fine. You want, this is the project report, I'll prepare a project report. And then all the numbers are theoretical, hypothetical, and academic, unfortunately. Then he goes to the bank manager also, unfortunately, earlier days, he would probably not as professional as today. And he will say, okay, fine, whatever the arrangements, quote unquote. And then the project report and the financing would be made. But then the technocrat owner of the organization does not know what is the costing, how to manage the money, how to be cost effective, how to be quality conscious, how to be consistent, how to be time bound. And then slowly, the problems starts creeping in. And within 6 months or a year, I have seen that 40, 50, 60% of the MSMEs, they become stressed. I'm not saying they become sick, but they become stressed. And then the problem continues. And then he again goes to the bank. Look, there is no money. Please give me more money. Most of the MSMEs forget that bank is also in a business. Their working capital is our money, which is deposited with the bank to earn the returns. And it is not their own money. I mean, they are bound to be disciplined, bound to be accountable to all the depositors. So they have to look at every lending judiciously. And then based on that, they will give you or they will not give the money. And then another problem I have also seen that most of the MSME stakeholders, they believe whatever money is in the bank is their money. They never believe that out of 100 rupee, probably their share could be 1 rupee, 2 rupee or 10 rupees, depending on the profitability. I mean, they have to look at the raw material cost. They have to look at the cost of overheads. They have to look at the cost of interest and obviously taxation if they make a profit. And then only whatever remains is their money. That doesn't happen. And that is where the problem starts. So I believe that the government has definitely understood. They have tried to support the MSME various ways. Mr. Rao has already mentioned what the government is trying to do. But then beyond that, to me, what is required to an MSME to survive, to thrive, to prosper is financial discipline, understanding of the costing, then understanding of the quality and the consistency, retaining the skilled manpower, because that is another challenge the MSMEs have, because obviously they can't afford to pay the salaries which the larger organizations will pay. Then most important, innovation. I mean, my company is Nichem Solution, which is a niche chemical manufacturing company. And we have been doing only innovation. Our entire product line is only innovation. The moment there is a competition, we try and exit that business. And I am proud to say that last 20 years, we have been the only supplier to majority of large organizations, organized organizations like Eureka Forbes, or the people are buyers from US, Mexico, and UAE. So it is all because of innovation. Then we have to learn to collaborate and cooperate with the competition. I mean, it is need to stop looking at each other with suspicion, because I mean, unless we collaborate, I mean, smaller organizations cannot be together. I mean, it is like a palm. I mean, unless the 5 fingers come together, there is no strength. And that is what, if happens, then only we will survive and we will progress. We, as Mr. Bhaskar said, our strength, India, is only labor-intensive industry, and that is where we need a professional. I also believe that the banks have to play a large role. When they are giving the money, let them train the person to utilize that money proper. And that's what my say is. I guess I'm reaching my time deadline, but that's my radical thought process. And let people start pondering and thinking about it. Thank you.
Brilliant. And there are questions where I'll ask you once again to interact and tell us something more about the things that you said. But thank you very much. This was very useful and very perceptive.
Thank you.
Could we have Mr. Bhushan Parekh, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Bhaskar. Good morning to all the esteemed panelists and all the participants attending this webinar today. It's a privilege for me to join and represent CRISIL, which has been a pioneer in the MSME segment over the last couple of years. Just to highlight that the work that CRISIL does in the MSME space, we have 3 large verticals. One is the ratings or the gradings product, which is essentially a grading on the MSME which CRISIL provides. We have been a pioneer in this space where we introduced the concept of gradings for MSMEs 15 years back. And over the last 15 years, we have graded more than 1.5 lakh MSMEs in India, which has helped them in turn get better access to credit and provided better business opportunities as well. The second vertical that I would like to call upon is the industry research, where we have coverage on more than 90 odd sectors with strong presence of MSMEs as well as large corporates, where we provide industry risk scores and opinions on what the sector is expected to do over the next 2 years to 5 years. And the third element that we bring on the table is thought leadership. Being an independent opinion provider, a lot of policymakers, stakeholders depend on us and on our research to bring a lot of issues to the fore for policy making. And that is where, especially for MSMEs, where there is a lack of data, CRISIL extensively works through surveys, through our networks, to bring in some of these survey highlights and insights which policymakers actively use in their policy making. So today in the webinar, I would like to just touch upon and bring some of these elements to the fore for the participants to understand what are the opportunities given the last 1 year, how we have seen the pandemic and the slowdown induced by the pandemic panning out, some of the policy measures that the government has introduced, Atmanirbhar Bharat and in the recent budget, and what could be some of the implications of that. Given the time limit, I will definitely be a little brief in my coverage today. With that, let me move on to a small deck that I would like to share with the audience. So if you look at it, the MSME segment, at least over the last, even before we were in the COVID-induced lockdown, there was a slowdown that we were witnessing in the segment. Mainly to highlight the issues that the segment has been facing even in the past is lack of pricing power, labor and availability of skilled labor. With the pandemic, we also saw the labor migrating back to their hometowns, and that is where the migration issue became a large issue for MSMEs to handle. The MSMEs have a largely low scale, and as Mr. Raja also highlighted, they are fairly small when it comes to the overall efficiencies and the scale at which they operate, which gives them some disadvantages to scale up. Delayed payments from large corporates. So if you're part of the supply chain for the corporates, we've seen cases where there are delays and payments do not come on time. Lack of financial flexibility. So again, a point that Mr. Rajay mentioned, the MSMEs need to be disciplined, and for that they need to understand how do they manage their finances better, which will help them provide much more financial flexibility and an ability to tide over peaks as well as troughs, and limited access to credit because of their scale and because of lack of data or risk aversion on the side of the lenders. All these issues have been existed in the past, but the pandemic actually bring a lot more weightage on each of these issues, and we saw a big impact on the MSMEs. Talking about the three segments, micro, small, and medium, where we covered about more than 11,000 odd companies, a sample set, we saw that the micro enterprises are under greater stress as compared to small and medium, again, given their size and some of the issues and challenges that they face. Just to highlight the revenue growth for the micro segment, which represents close to 32% of the loan book of the lenders, the segment had already witnessed a 7% decline from FY17 to FY20, which means that even before the COVID began, the sector was under some stress. The EBITDA margin also was about 3.3%, which is not that high for the segment. And the gross current asset days, which is a measure of the working capital, over the last 3 years have been fairly high, which means that they are facing issues on the working capital. If you look at the outlook for this year, given these issues and challenges and COVID, the situation is expected to be a lot more grim. Talking about small and medium enterprises, the smaller enterprises represent close to 40 to 45% of the loan book. There, the revenue growth has been, I would say, marginally positive, but the EBITDA margin has been decent enough at about 7%, and the gross current asset days have been about 205 days. Similarly, for medium enterprises, the situation is slightly better, and the working capital situation is also better. And hence, we believe the micro segment will be the one where we are seeing a lot more pressure this year. Talking about the expectation, while 20, as we spoke, the expectation was about close to 2% decline is what we are seeing in terms of the revenue mix overall. For 21, we are expecting a revenue decline of close to 15 to 17%. And that is largely due to the demand that was just wiped off from this segment. Talking about 22, we are expecting a bounce back, and I'll touch upon why we are expecting that. But again, with the bounce back of close to 16 to 17%, I would not call it as a strong recovery. It is, I would say, a structural, a short-term recovery. And with 21 and 22 combined, we will close to be at levels where we were last year, right? In terms of the margins, there has been a shrinkage in the margins of close to 200 to 300 basis points. Largely, the commodity prices, at least for the first half of the year, were benign, and we are seeing some uptick on those front. But still, the margins will be better because of the various measures that even the MSMEs have implemented. The situation is expected to be better next year with demand coming back. With these issues, the government was swift enough and introduced various policy measures and support measures. Talking about the key ones, the 3 lakh crore collateral-free loan, where we have seen a good amount of uptick in terms of sanctions and disbursals. Close to 70% of 3 lakh crore has been sanctioned, and close to 55 to 60% has been disbursed as well. There has been a moratorium that was provided to the MSMEs, and a lot of MSMEs took up that moratorium as well. In terms of the PSL targets, which is the priority sector lending targets, they have been revised. and especially to include micro and weaker segments. And they currently stand at 7.5% and 10% of the adjusted net bank credit. It is expected to give a thrust to the segment as well. And the restructuring, where the stressed MSMEs to be eligible for debt restructuring. These measures, we believe, has given a big lifeline to the MSME segment. And hence, we saw optimism in the overall segment sentiments of the MSME segment. So talking of the sentiment, and this is something that CRISIL actively tracks quarter on quarter. So we every quarter we come up with a joint study called CRISI Dex. It's an index that of about 1,100 odd MSMEs with revenue size of less than 25 crore. This is a study done along with SIDBI, and the idea is to cover equal number of MSMEs in each of the segments, manufacturing and services in the economy. We then come up with an index, a number that we publish every quarter. And essentially we ask the MSMEs every quarter on close to 8 parameters on the production volume, order book, profitability, capacity utilization, and employee base. And we also take into account the expectation for the next quarter. How do they expect things to pan out on each of these parameters that I just spoke of? Now, if you see a trend analysis of the CRISI Dex that we have brought about, the index was at 106 in Q2 FY20, which went up to 113, which was a positive. But talking about Q4, where we had seen some slowdown, and also March brought in the lockdown as well, we had already seen a dip in terms of the overall index. Q1 is when the lockdown was in place, and we saw a drastic decline, both in the manufacturing segment and the services segment in terms of the overall sentiments. And we were at a historic low of 37. However, the government, as we mentioned, has brought in a lot of support measures, and the gradual opening up of the economy saw a lot of production and capacity utilization coming back. Things gradually started improving, even in terms of the consumer demand. And the large corporates also started ramping up their production, which in turn gave a lifeline to the MSMEs as well to bring their production back to the fore. And that is where we saw a jump in the overall index. So the index from 37 jumped to 90. And obviously it was led by the manufacturing sector, because services sector, due to still the restrictions that we have in terms of social distancing, brought in a lot of challenges to the services segment. However, when you spoke of the sentiment for the next quarter, due to the festivities and the gradual opening up of the economy and better credit availability, a lot of MSMEs said that they are a lot more optimistic for the next quarter, which was technically October to December, and we saw an uptick in the overall index as well. What are the issues that MSMEs brought about in our survey? Demand of products and services is a primary challenge for MSMEs, and which constitute a large part of the issues.
We are already beyond time.
Sure. So I'll just maybe quickly touch upon a couple of other elements.
Can we take them up in the interaction?
Sure. No problem.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you.
Sorry, just trying to keep time. Okay, can we have the third panelist, Mr. Amit Pandit?
Thank you, Mr. Bhaskar, and good afternoon to all my fellow panelists. Talking about MSME, I mean, you all have heard about the basic. Mr. Rajesh spoke about what are the issues. Now, being on the board of a bank for the last 13 years, I would try to represent the financing part of MSME, which is a key factor which impacts MSME. So let me share by saying that, okay, every government or RBI says you have to do this. The banks have to lend. But at the end, there is always a pointer that you have to ensure, that means the bank has to ensure that it is credit worthy. So they may say at the top, saying that, you disburse, but you have to also understand from the banker's perspective that to disburse, the person has to be credit worthy. So what do you mean by being credit worthy? I'll touch upon it as we go ahead. But this is a challenge. So a lot of people say that, there are so many facilities, but the banks are not disbursing. Why is it that the banks are not disbursing? One, banks are liable to the depositors first. They run business on deposits, and the deposits are lent. So if there is a problem, the depositors are going to then, you see what happened with PMC. Obviously, there were exceptional issues, but the same situation comes everywhere. So the whole focus is bank deals with other people's money and it lends. So it has to ensure credit discipline. And that is why the credit is a little risk-averse. Coming to that. Now, coming to the issues as to why, I'll come to the bank issues also later, but let me touch upon what is more critical. In India, the business, post-demonetization or pre-demonetization, I should say, was majorly cash. It was virtually 50% of the economy which was running on cash businesses. I will share with you a very simple case which actually came to us when I was at the board, when they wanted a loan. This was a business which was running for the last 50 years. They wanted a loan, and when we asked for the financial papers, we saw on paper the company was doing only business of 5 crores. They employed 100 people, and off record, they were doing business of 30 to 40 crores. But on paper, they were only doing business of 5 crores. Now, post the demonetization, it was like everybody needed money because their cash was stuck. He came with expectation that I have this, I have that. But when we say, ask the paper, where's the paper? The paper does not show anything. Why does the paper not show anything? Because there was no record. They had not kept the record. There's no balance sheet which shows that, or it proves that the company is doing business of 25 crores. Furthermore, the promoter of the company was finalizing his income tax return by showing an income of 4.5 lakhs. That's it. Whereas his assistant was paid a salary of 8 lakhs. Now, this is what is actually seen. Now, these are issues which had happened or they're still prevalent. As Mr. Rajesh said, we start with a business. When the business starts, everybody says, okay, we have to do this. But as we go on, in India, typically it is like, do business first, the rest we can do it later. The point is, you cannot do it later. Money is something that you need to manage from day one. If you are not able to manage the money from day one, you have a problem with the business going forward, any which ways. So, point taken, there are challenges that you don't have good people. The MSMEs don't get good people. But today, a lot of outsourced people are available. Outsourced CFO services are available. There are a lot of these things which you should look forward to and make use of their services. Because those are the people who can handhold you. Because I don't claim that an entrepreneur needs to be an expert in understanding finance. He is an expert in understanding his technical stuff. He's an expert in understanding his business stuff. But he needs to know basics of finance and let the rest of the people handle it. But unless that is done, these problems will continue. So coming to the point that if my records are not correct, how would the bank assess your credit viability? Most of the people don't even have data. So that is where the creditworthiness assessment of SMEs becomes a problem for a bank or a lending institution. That how do I assess your creditworthiness? Now, because if I have to assess your creditworthiness, I need to know what you have done in the past, but half of the record is not available. Because as I said, 50% of the economy earlier was cash economy, and therefore it is just post 2016 where people have started migrating to the online or the digital economy all of a sudden. So this is typically a challenge for the bankers. And that is where there is a so-called what you call as the deficit in funding. And the next part, which is also a natural situation, is lack of collateral or lack of security, which is India basically runs on collateral funding. India, there is no clear funding or there is no cash flow funding. Everything is based on a collateral. So Indian business has been brought this way. The entire banking businesses works on a collateral funding. And therefore you need, unless there is a collateral, the funding availability would always be limited. So these are issues which so most of the people today have their houses, which they have given as collateral, most of them, or whatever is available. For some of them, even that is not possible. When that is not possible, the government has come out with the scheme, obviously, the credit CGMST scheme. Now, where up to 2 crores, you take a guarantee, you have to pay 1% commission, but you have to register, you take the guarantee, and then collateral-based funding. Now, whether that genuinely happens, it will happen provided, again, as I said, your papers are in order. If your papers are not in order, if your balance sheets are not in order, even that will not help. So that is the basics. So one line, keep your financial records in order. That's the first part. The second issue, obviously, is, managing your receivables. Now, that's a challenge in some of the cases. But receivables normally, most of the SMEs or MSMEs deal with possibly one large client who would probably try to squeeze their credit terms. Instead of paying them in 45 days, he may pay them in 60 days, which is possible. And because of which, they may have challenges of recovering the money, and they cannot really push also because they are dependent on that client. So possibly that is one of the challenges which is faced. But having said that, once it is registered with SME, the government has put a diktat that if you are registered as a MSME, then they have to pay within a stipulated period of time. If not, they are liable. But a lot of people don't complain, because the point is, if they complain, there is a possibility that they will lose business. So that's also a challenge. But at the same time, a regular follow-up mechanism helps, because without follow-up, if the cash flows don't come in, the sale is complete only when the cash comes into your business, because till the time the cash comes to your business, your sale is not complete. So you have to ensure that your basics are taken care of, and that is what you can control. Yeah, obviously you cannot control the receivables, but the companies, you can at least request. There are options available. Then the problem which most of them face is long processing times for loans. As I said, credit assessment is a time-bound process. Now, everybody needs to assess the credit worthiness. Then a question which is coming is, most of the companies have taken, or SMEs have taken, a large amount of debt, much beyond what they can afford. Now, how is that? Now the banks don't lend them money. So what do these guys do? You get unsecured loans from all these unsecured lenders. That is where they go to. And the moment, and then it's like those guys charge you around 20% upwards of interest. So once you go to them and you borrow from them, you have a large cycle, which also impacts your score. It also impacts, because that follows, or that comes as debt when you look at CIBIL. So therefore, when people say, no, I have only bank funding of so much, but you have taken unsecured funding because the bank has not given you so much funding, and that also creates a problem. And this unsecured lending is a cause of problem for majority of the cases. Now, also as an example, in one of the cases where the person had a turnover, without sharing names, obviously, the person had a turnover of around 4 crores. He was doing a business, but he created 4 separate companies. And he came to me because he had some problem with the debt. And I asked him, what is the debt and where have you taken it from? He has taken it from a local money lender, paying 3% per month. I was shocked. I said, why? Then the answer was, he said, sir, it is easy to take from the money lender. Why do I need to give documents to the bank? Why I don't have...
We are running out.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just complete in a minute. So, so what is the solution for this? The solution obviously is, as I said, firstly, keep your financial records. For cash flow management, seek help. Build a credit score. Bhushan can explain a little more on that, but you have to build a credit score. And alternatives to funding, a lot of options available today: P2P borrowing, SIDB loans, and trades. We'll take it up in the discussion.
In the interest.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. A very interesting talk. I would love to hear more, but I just want to get to the interaction.
Yeah.
Okay. We've had 3 very impressive presentations. 1 on what it is to be an entrepreneur. 2, how do you go about analyzing the business? How do you go about rating the business? I had to cut him short when he came to the rating, but we'll come back to that, sir. And the 3rd is, how does a banker view the MSME? Now, I have a lot of admiration for Saraswat Bank. It's one of the best banks among the scheduled banks in India. And I'm not casting aspersions on Saraswat Bank. But when the government gives moratorium-free loans, and that's the first question, that will create a future problem for either banks or for MSMEs. It's open to everyone.
Yeah, it is. See, the challenge obviously is moratorium. Finally, at the end of the day, the government gives a moratorium. Means, is the government confirming to paying in case the borrower does not pay? Because finally, as I said, it is for a bank. They have to deal with their debts. So if they give a moratorium, they have to recover the moratorium with interest. Now, if something has to be waived off or something has to be given off, who will pay them for that? So that, see, banks are finally running. If you look at what is the bank's margin, they take deposits and they lend. So the margin at max is 4%. If 4.5%, if you take the private sector guys like HDFC and Kotak, it is less than 3% for all the other guys. So, which is called as NIM. But practically, if I have to look at it, that I only take money, so I hardly have 3%. So if I have to take the additional cost, where will they recover it from? So that is also a challenge. When see, government can come with a moratorium, that's fine. But how can they push the moratorium to bank? Because banks are not, they are lending, they're doing it as a business. And to do business, I think you need to have mechanisms to ensure that they cover or recover their cost if they are charging for the loans. That's
the government is not, the government is not going to reimburse you the losses.
Yes.
The government's not going to reimburse you any losses.
They don't.
How do you see it, sir, as an entrepreneur, Mr. Rajay?
See, yesterday I was listening to Mr. Shaktikanta Das. He came to Bombay Chamber of Commerce Industries Foundation Day. And he precisely said the same thing what Mr. Pandit said, that look, as a RBI governor, I only make the policy. Correct. I do not push the banks to lend, because ultimately we are also trying to reduce the bank situation. We are trying to change the situation. The bank, the debt, the debts which are not being recovered are to be reduced. So the best thing in this all situation is, yes, everybody has to be disciplined. I mean, there are people who would give you the money, as Mr. Pandit said, at 3%, but do you have a wherewithal to pay that interest and still be in the business and make a profit? Is one introspection every entrepreneur has to do. And as Mr. Pandit said, yes, we have to be disciplined. We have to have our financial records clear. I always ask everybody who complains about the banks, okay, I have come to you, give me 100,000 rupees. What will you do? Will you give me blindly that, okay, you have seen my face and I'll give you, or you will dwell over the situation, whether when I will repay, how I will repay, do I have the capability to repay? The rule is same for everybody. Yes. Why are you changing it for the banks? That's my take on this.
Point brilliant. And Mr. Bhushan, Mr. Parekh, you are from the credit rating business. How do you view this relaxation of fund availability and the eventual consequences for the MSME sector?
Sure. So I think definitely there will be an pressure on the MPS for the banks going forward. However, if I look at the pandemic and the challenges that it has posed, the positive side, basis of an interaction with a lot of bankers, has been the bankers, rather than just being a provider of capital, have become a partner in the business. And I'll just give you an example. The banker used to first just give the credit and be involved only on the monitoring from his or her office or a bank, right? The pandemic actually pushed a lot of these bankers to talk to the entrepreneurs, to say, look, what are the challenges that you're facing in terms of demand, order, what is your product? And I've also seen bankers, I'll not name them, but I've seen bankers going to the extent of linking some of the smaller entrepreneurs with the larger banks that are part of the same portfolio.
Wonderful.
And ensuring that there is a linkage between them so that the larger one gets a benefit, the smaller one is able to survive, which was a big challenge during the pandemic, right? And I see that as a big positive because to the point that Mr. Pandit also mentioned, these MSMEs do need expertise. They need hand-holding and expertise of a larger player, someone like a bank. So the bank can facilitate these aspects. Brilliant. So I see that as an opportunity that has come out of the relaxations and the overall restructuring that happened last year.
Okay. So we've heard this thing. Now here's a budget. The budget has made several provisions for all the MSMEs. Now it's open to anyone. What more could the government have done to make sure the MSMEs grow healthily? It's a blue sky.
Mr. Bhaskar, there is a question from Mr. Arvinder Bharat.
Can I come to the question a little later? Let me ask one more question and then I'll take audience questions.
Sure.
Just give me 2 minutes. Yes. What do you think the government could have done to nurture these MSMEs a little more? They've grown up in an environment.
Definitely made effort. I 100% know they have made efforts, but still further relaxation is required because typically India has the strength of labor and labor intensive industries like leather, garment, services, software. All these places, if the ladies are allowed to work even at night, which typically Bangladesh or Philippines or Sri Lanka, they have done, and that's why the garment industry has flourished there. Why we were the pioneers, but it hasn't flourished as much. So government should slowly, in spite of facing the resistance from the unions and other places, they should definitely do that. They have already done skill improvement programs. So I think the government is definitely going in the right direction.
Okay, great. Anyone else before them? I know we are running short of time and I have to take audience questions also. Any other views?
So maybe I'll just put in the point here.
Yes.
While the government has done a lot, the PLI scheme especially is a step in the right direction and is expected to bring in a lot more investments. But essentially what we're looking at, a lot more MSMEs coming into the supply chain, which means that we will need very strong supply chain solutions from the capital provision point of view, right? And that is where I still feel that Threads as a platform or other online discounting platforms need to be strengthened. There should be strong incentives given to the corporates to be on the Threads platform and penalties if required, so that the payments happen in those windows of those 45 days as well.
Brilliant.
That is one area that needs to be looked at.
Excellent. Sorry, now can we go ahead with the audience questions because I know that I've overstepped my brief.
Yeah, there is a question from Mr. Arvinder Bharat and CMD of Mantech Consultants. He has written, what is your understanding why service exports have not been given an impetus in the budget, especially in view of rising competition from countries like Thailand, Cambodia, Philippines, etc.? So anyone can take up.
Anyone? Why have service exports not been given that much a benefit?
Yeah, why service exports have not been given impetus in the budget, especially.
And just one more addition to this same question is the new FEMA guidelines for consultants when they export and they get even $100 as revenue. The number of disclosures, declarations, etc., that are required can be very irksome. Open.
I think Mr. Pandit, are you taking this question?
No, you can take it. I'll add on.
Okay. I mean, I'm definitely not an expert, but yes, I think the government should do more to the service industry or to the consulting industry because both are our strengths. Both, yes. I mean, we are into a consulting export business as well, and a substantial one. And yes, I do agree that the compliance required is pretty high. But then again, here I will give a benefit to the government because people have been utilizing the services and the consultation route to siphon out the money from the country. And probably that is why the government is going slow. I'm sure they will open up. As the compliances become better and better, the government definitely open up because I have been associated with Niti Aayog chief and the other policymakers over the last 2 and 3 years. What thought process I see of the government and the efforts I see happening. Most of the common people don't know, but then the things are definitely happening, and they are happening in the right direction.
Excellent.
What I need to add is the government has shown its intent, which always the government shows. The key factor obviously is implementation. Now that is a challenge across all the government departments for so many years. The implementation of the reforms which has been put in place. Because what happens is, what is the application of mind when you are preparing a law or when you are preparing a regulation is actually not done. So they expect, and if you look at the laws which are prepared or the laws which are made, they are made with the basic intention that a businessman is a criminal. I mean, they don't look at it from the perspective that there could be a mistake. It is like, oh, there is a problem. So if this is a problem, what do you need to do? So they need to be streamlined. They need to be, somebody has to look at that, because we have archaic laws. I mean, old laws. They need to be changed in terms of today's requirement. So unless that is done, so the basic thing what the government needs to look into is, how do I reduce? Like today, GST across the world is one of the best things. But today you look at the compliance requirements in India, it's humongous for people. And especially for smaller guys, it's very difficult. And as it was earlier mentioned, I have to do business in 3 states. I have to have 3 separate registrations. So therefore, it becomes very difficult for a single. So I mean, from a bank perspective, also, when we originally when we had told them that we have a bank which has multiple branches, so all the Bankers Association had said that give us 1 registration. They said no, every state 1 separate registration. Now this leads to problems. So they need to streamline these things. So I think these are the things that they need to look at: streamline regulation. So actually, ease of business
takes place.
Ease of business.
Brilliant. Any other?
Yeah, there is one more question.
Yes, we can take one more question. Yes.
There is one more question that has come from Mr. Anand Sardeshmukh. He's a management counsel. I think this was covered in Mr. Parikh's PPT also. He is asking about what is the status of MSME outstanding with PSUs and private sector. Has anything been done about the huge outstanding that is there with MSMEs, and as indicated by the government during the pandemic relief program, that MSMEs need to repay back to PSUs need to repay back to MSMEs? Is it actually happening, and what is about this huge outstanding that is lying with PSU?
I'll just mention one thing before the panelists come in. It's amazing how much of push Nitin Gadkari, as the Minister of MSMEs, has actually given to make sure that PSUs take care of MSMEs by paying them in time. No other minister has taken that much of a forceful approach than him. But now it's open to the panelists.
So I think taking cue from what Mr. Pandit said, we have taken the steps in the right direction, right?
Yes.
By ensuring that the public sector enterprises are asked to pay back. There could be challenges. The MSMEs possibly don't want to spoil their relations because they are looking at a long-term sustainability as well, right? So these are, it's always a tussle between the corporate or the large enterprise who owes the money and the company which needs the money, right? Yes. But definitely, at least even on the, I would say the resolution part, MSMEs now have a platform to at least raise their concerns and complain if they are facing such challenges, right? We didn't have such platforms in the past. And today all that data is public on the website, right? So I think that we have certain platforms, we have different forums available for MSMEs to raise their concerns and voices. How aware the MSMEs are, what are the resources on their end to ensure that happens will differ from MSME to MSME. But at least I would say we do today have frameworks in place so that this happens. The pace might be different at different points in time.
Okay, great. I don't think we may be able to take any more questions.
One last question, Mr. Bharat.
Oh, lovely.
This is the last question that has come from somebody who is very, very enthusiastic to ask, actually.
Okay, please go ahead.
He is Mr. Vijay Tandle. He has asked, I have a question about banks. How banks are liberal in terms of giving loans for agriculture. are banks liberal in terms of giving loans to agriculture sector? Because there are many, because there are people from agricultural sector who have seen a little bit of apprehensions from the banks in terms of giving loans to them. So there is, this question has come from Mr. Vijay Tandle. Mr. Amit, would you like to take up?
Yeah. See, banks generally see agriculture sector or any sector. Now, agriculture sector is mentioned as a priority sector from the perspective of banking. So any bank loan which is given to agriculture is taken as first. But again, at the end of the day, finally, it boils down to that word, credit worthiness of a person. Whenever a bank is going to give a loan, obviously they will have to first assess the credit worthiness of the person, whether it is agriculture or whether it is. So today, if you look at from an agricultural setup in India, what is the agricultural setup? Today, more than 80% are marginal farmers. It's only the 20% who are the main farmers who are taking. So the marginal farmers would have a small amount of land. And most of the time, that is already mortgaged to their money lenders. So in majority of the cases, because see, they don't have direct access to the banks right from the beginning. So the banks normally give agricultural loan, but yes, again, there is obvious, as I said, they look at individual case by case basis. And based on that, today, suppose a person is indebted. Most of the people who come to the bank are so indebted that they have so much debt that it is virtually difficult for a bank to even give a single amount. And then, people believe that banks are not lending. The banks are not lending because obviously whatever data is available, the person has taken unsecured loans, it has taken loans from money lender. It becomes very difficult for the bank to then prove. But normally, if it is agriculture, and as I said, if my documents or if my papers are good, they definitely give. And nationalized banks do it much more, the PSU banks, than the private sector banks. But having said that, it is also the private sector because it is a part of the priority sector. So private sector banks also good luck in case everything is as per their requirements. Nobody goes out of their requirements to give, but as per requirements, they definitely give.
And again, just a line more. If you look at the data, national data, the defaulters are not the agriculturists.
Correct.
The defaulters are not even the MSMEs in terms of percentages. The defaulters are big ones, and there's someone big behind them.
No, that is true. So see, what happens is the larger ones are the bigger ones. So on an average, as per data which is made available, the MSME default rate is 12% industry-wide, roughly around. Whereas the larger ones are much larger. But if you look at it from the perspective of, giving money, I mean, that is where most of these small banks, the small finance banks, are more active. Like
they're doing a brilliant job there.
So they're doing, so the microfinance institutions, especially the small lenders, are using. When it has a larger amount of loans, then that is where my documentation comes in. For smaller loans, I think the 50,000 to a lakh of loans, the microfinance companies, the small finance banks are already providing, and they're doing a great job at providing that. And according to me, for smaller ticket, there is no issue. The micro level, there is no issue, but the medium level, there is an issue because documentation has to be kept. That's why I say.
Excellent. Excellent. This was amazing. I mean, within a short period of time, the insights that three of you have provided, much food for thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Proceed with the program. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Bhaskar. Thank you, Mr. Parekh. Thank you, Mr. Raj.
Thank you, everybody.
And we would
like
like
very interesting to be the panelist.
Thank you. We would like to move on to the final panelist of today's session, and Mr. Kapil Kaul is our Executive Vice President.
Yes.
And I request him to deliver his closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Good morning again, everybody. And before I continue, a big thank you to you all, excellent panelists, as well as Mr. Bhaskar for moderating the session brilliantly and with such ease and discipline of time management, which is the essence of a good seminar. And as you very rightly said, I was amazed as to in such a short time, there were such crisp comments by each of the panelists on each of the elements that, honestly speaking, my own understanding of the situation and MSA sector has improved vastly in this last 45 minutes. So I would like to start with Mr. Rajan Raje. Thank you, sir, for taking time out from your, I know that with the kind of knowledge, experience, and background that each of you people have, and especially you, Mr. Raje, your time is very valuable, even today, more so today. I think nobody retires before 80 because wisdom comes only after 60, 65. The application of it can only be done at that time. Because when you are actually working in a company, you're in a rut and you don't know how to apply your knowledge. You simply trundle along with what is happening at that point of time. And especially if you're in a pandemic situation, you sort of either you have all the time in the world to think and you can do nothing, or you're doing everything and you don't have time to think. So thank you, sir. It was nice of you.
We did everything and we grew by 30%.
Absolutely. So it was nice of you to have elucidated on the pitfalls of an MSME, and you made a very good analogy of talking about what is the famous thing about a string and a rope. So a string is a string which can be broken very easily, but when it is woven into a rope, it is very strong. And you're extremely right in pointing out that MSMEs, if they collaborate together, and I think probably the banking system can be this kind of a facilitator of collaboration between the MSMEs, then knowledge shared is knowledge gained, and that in mass becomes strength for the MSMEs to become better functioning entities. And also your other point which you made just now about women working and labor in the night. Yes, interest and electricity and labor is something that is charged to a business on a 24/7, 365-day basis.
Yeah.
And it is not run through as a costing on a 365, 24/7 basis. So if there are ways, which is of course in a humane manner, in a social manner, in a humane manner, definitely if a routine, sort of a 24/7 working of an entity like Korea, South Korea is famous for running on that basis. And that's why they've grown so fast and they've gone so far. So yes, that's a good point, sir. So thank you, Mr. Raje. It's very kind of you. Next, Mr. Bhushan Parekh. My apologies to you for your you're being truncated for your presentation. But my thanks to Mr. Bhaskar for being the immaculate disciplinarian of maintaining timing, which in any case, time is of essence. I think in India, there's something which is to do with our own, well, let's say, sense of history and spirituality and where we come from as a people, that time is stretchable. It goes into our next life. It comes from before our lives, and it carries on. So, and we don't give value to time. So, thank you, Mr. Bhaskar. But at the same time, Mr. Parekh, it would be nice for you to share this presentation with all the members of the chamber and the panelists. I mean, and the people who are attending this seminar today. And definitely, they can connect with you. Of course, not impinging on your time, but as and when it's feasible to probably help them in whichever way. I also thank you for, apart from this, talking about the supply chain solutions, which the banking system would act as a facilitator. And also, you very rightly talked about how, the MSMEs have been hit in the pandemic and that they have to manage their financial books properly. And the government is giving support. And I would say here, I think in India, we need to get into more of an American sort of thinking, in a sense that we have this habit of actually looking at a budget as a big grand event and giving it too much importance, right?
Yes.
That's one. Two, we look at that, mera kaam nahi hota hai, so government mujhe kya karega? No. As a very famous Kennedy saying, that ask not what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country.
Yes.
So it's time for us to actually step up as people to do things for ourselves. Definitely, which you very rightly pointed out, let the banking system become facilitators to this and collaborators to assisting everybody to becoming more efficient and being less loose, very loosely functioning, as Mr. Raja also pointed out. Lastly, Mr. Amit Pandit. So, thank you for being here and very concise. I was noticing that you had all their points at your fingertips, and you in a very crisp manner you talked about the fact that a business of 5 crores is doing a turnover of 30 to 40 crores. It's giving an IT return of 4.5 lakhs and paying the assistant 8 lakhs. And when you look at these facts, these are absolute facts. Yes, I know, because someone came to me to facilitate in increasing his FMCG business and getting a collaboration. So I said, that's okay, you want that, but like, can you provide me a books of accounts? So he, said, oh, no, हमारा तो आराम से 50-60 crore का turnover है. So I said, all right, so give me a books accounts. So he kept running around the, table. So I asked my friend who was introducing us, so what's wrong with this guy? He says, no, the problem is he doesn't have books of accounts. Right? so exactly, I just remembered exactly what you're talking about. And I thought initially that he was actually fooling me, Yeah, I mean, होगा ठीक है, बोल रहा है 5 होगा 10, but can't be 50, 40. But when I heard it from you, I immediately remember that incident, and I said, yeah, it's bang on. And you were very right that the MSMEs, and the smaller they are, do not understand how to manage money. And yes, Mr. Raji, you rightly pointed out that technocrats and professionals go on thinking that you can do business, and they don't really understand the components of a commercial enterprise and financing, especially financing. So, and you were talking about collateral funding, which is an anathema to this country. There are internationally a lot of collateral-free funding, but that's a system of assessment and understanding which I think this country can do. And America and all of the nations have collateral-free funding. And maybe as the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, we can see how we can act as an intermediary to get in this kind of collateral-free funding into the MSME sector and try and facilitate this. It's a point taken. And your GST compliances, yes, you are right. It's a big factor. GST is a big bear in the room, and it was supposed to be actually the horse that would actually make you run faster, take you faster, but actually it's become a bear. So, sir, before I end, I would like to thank everybody. Plus, I would like to leave everybody with a thought and a pointer as to what are the positive things that an MSME can look at, and what can it look to in the future going forward, where we all know that the environmental issues, forget about the pandemic, the environmental issues that are affecting India or the whole world is huge. It's humongous. And you all may be doing something known as the circular economy. So circular economy, in short, is like when we were all kids and even smaller or whatever with people, we used to go to the neighborhood Modi Khana, and we used to go and order anything we wanted, whether it is a cornflake or a tomato sauce or maybe even aloo, tomato, or whatever it may be, a toothpaste and powder. So we took what was available on a need basis. This today has actually, in consumerism, from a need-based, it's become a consumer preference-based. I want a tomato sauce, so I go to a hyper mall or a shopping mall, and there are about 100 different varieties of tomato sauce available with 10 bottles of each. And all I need is, in fact, 1 bottle. But when I see those, I'll end up buying another 2 bottles of other variants because I never knew they existed, even though I don't need them. Now, the upshot of this is that I have actually taken 3 bottles of tomato or different ketchups where the tomatoes and those other ingredients have been put in, and I'm going to waste at least 2 to 3 bottles of them, not eat them. So the water, the resources, the labor that's gone in has completely been destroyed, and it's destroying the planet. Now, my point is that MSMEs are the ideal vehicles to actually do localized business with localized supply on a need-based platform, which the banking system can facilitate, and it can be linked with entities globally that can actually help to outsource these products for their needs on a virtual platform, on a virtual delivery basis. So with this, and thank you again, Mr. Bhaskar. It was a brilliant moderating. You managed the time very well. And I think we should be closing on time. Thank you, Mr. Rath, and thank you, Mr. Rao, most of all, for organizing this fantastic webinar. And sir, I give the speaker to you, Mr. Rao. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all, Mr. Thank you. We like to thank all of you. We express our sincerest thanks to all of you for sparing your valuable time today with us and sharing your perspective on this topic. And we would also like to thank the team ISCC, and especially in team ISCC, it will go, the efforts, all efforts will go futile unless and until the entire team has to be thanked. Mr. Kamal Vora, the Secretary General of ISCC, Ms. Trupti Power, Director of ISCC, and Mr. Sagar Kadam, who looks after the entire IT operations, and he is the background of all this entire setup, IT setups that you are seeing today. And Mr. Satish Sharma, who looks after the finance, and Mr. Amol Gadi. So it's thank you to all of you, and we look forward to having more sessions like this in future too.
Thank you.
Satya, thank you for organizing it well. And Kapil, when you talked about the ketchup, I think you were talking about my daughter, I guess, I thought. Picking up 3 bottles instead of 1 bottle.
But thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, once again. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure to be.
Thank you all.
Thank you.